The views expressed on this program are not necessarily those of the Association for Software Testing, its management, sponsors, or staff. To my left, in case you're keeping track at home, Lanessa Hunter is joining us this evening. Hello, Lanessa.
Hi, Ben.
How are you?
Doing well. Hey, dude.
How's the conference so far?
It's amazing.
This isn't your first one.
This is my third in 5 years.
The first one speaking?
Yes.
Awesome. And how's that?
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. So
it was a lot of fun.
You did Beyond Bewilderment, which is bewildering in and of itself. So
I should have added maybe a little. I can add to the
a
title
little
to
qualifier
yes.
to clarify. So Beyond Bewilderment. So what are you so bewildered about?
My talk was about moving beyond bewilderment and finding personal success in testing. And somebody mentioned today some lag time when you are, say, in the middle of something where you are bewildered. Maybe you're bored and you're not quite sure why, or you feel overwhelmed working in chaos, or overwhelmed by criticism and not being sure how to respond. It's sort of disorienting. And recognizing those experiences as opportunities, although it's very tough sometimes to be in those spots as testers or as human beings, right? And so my talk was about learning from those experiences and being able to handle them better the next time they come around, or to recognize when you're in them too.
So this is clearly something you've experienced firsthand. I think everybody has.
Right.
So do you have any examples of the types of bewilderment that you're describing and kind of how you dealt with it?
Sure.
Well, I think one of the things that came up in the session, a good example that I wanted to ask about, was you talked about having a manager who came up to, you go and have your performance reviews, and the feedback you would get was like, just keep doing what you're doing a great job.
Right.
But feeling stymied by that, and how do you deal with that sort of feedback?
Right, exactly. He meant well. But it's not what I was looking for. I wanted to be challenged. And so in that particular situation, I recognized, you know what, I'm bored, I don't feel good about going into work every day. I started to look around. I shook things up outside of work by participating in a painting workshop. There's a little story about how I came to that, which had to do with volunteering in 4th grade classes, teaching hands-on lessons to science graders, which led me to this painting workshop, which the inspiration for this talk came from encounters with bewilderment in that painting workshop where I spent 3 days in silence with blank canvas with no instruction on technique. The whole theory behind this workshop was if you can hold a brush, you can paint. So I think I just got off track from answering your question, but that's an example of where I was. And the way I got past being bored at work was I did something to shake things up outside of work, and then I started looking around back in 2009. The only online testing publication that I knew of at the time was Sticky Minds, and that led me to find this community where, wow, there's this whole world of testing out there that I had yet to discover. And this completely changed my view about what was possible in my career, and I needed to go find a place where I could put these ideas into practice. So.
Yeah, I think when you talk about the painting workshop, I love that the painting workshop had rules, right? There were 2 rules in the painting class, and I thought that you tied them in to your experience nicely. Can you recount what the rules were again?
The 2 rules of the workshop were, and this is processarts.com. Rule number 1, you were not to comment on anyone else's work. And the reason for this was, let's say you walk by my workspace and you say, hey, Lanessa, that's a nice looking dog you painted, and guess what? That's not a dog. And I spend the next 3 days beating myself up for being, a terrible artist.
Right.
And so that was creating a safe workspace, but also allowing you to encounter what you would and not really judge it, and to follow the process and discover that it's going to take you somewhere that you had never imagined. The second rule was, when you think you're done, before you take the piece down from your workspace, check in with the facilitator. And that facilitator is going to ask you a series of open-ended questions. And you, I discovered, are going to figure out whether or not you're really done, or if there was something you were avoiding and that you needed to dive further into.
Doesn't that doesn't that tie in a little bit into like session-based testing, which has the debriefs?
It does.
So have you seen that sort of parallel works in your current working situation?
Absolutely. I care a lot about creativity and freedom as a tester, and it's important to me to support that with people on my team, be they developers or testers or what have you. And so when someone isn't sure about, Lanessa, what do you think about this? I'll just ask them an open-ended question, hopefully, or more open-ended questions to lead them to find their own answers, and also in kind of figuring my own things out when I feel stuck.
Right.
I try to ask open-ended questions and remember, okay, this question is going to result in a yes or no. I don't want to ask that.
Right.
Open-ended questions are tough sometimes.
They are.
One of the other things, talking about session-based testing, you had said that your team wasn't all, like, there was some resistance to the change in implementing session-based testing. Can you talk a bit about how you overcame some of that within the team to help them feel safe and supported?
I acted like the facilitator in the painting workshop, and I asked some open-ended questions, and I quickly realized that in listening and understanding that maybe I could have done a better job at explaining why it was that we were doing this. And I explained how this was a benefit for them and for our team. Those reasons being, it's a lightweight way to track our work, for us to remember what happened in that 2 hours we were intensely testing, and for us to learn from one another so we can be accountable if someone says, how much time are you spending? Why is testing taking so long? Well, yeah, we found some bugs, but look at all these other issues we found. And hey, one day we can use this information to get more testers and to get more help. So once I listened and understood the concerns, I could address them.
Anyone that's ever met me for more than, say, an hour finds out pretty quick that I'm a habitual second guesser. Right? I
haven't spent enough time with you. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's true. Our engineer tonight is actually my brother, and he's nodding in the background. I'm a habitual second guesser, so I go with a solution, and I go, no, really, is that the best solution? And I've found that if I go to someone and I just talk through it, and they ask me questions as I go, I can kind of either resolve my doubt or raise it and go, you know what, you're right. I need to vector in this other direction. So I found it very helpful too.
Yeah. There was another thing that I thought really resonated with the group in the session this morning, the question of when do we launch and how the pressure gets put on the testing team to help make that decision. And I think that the money quote in that was when Lanessa isn't scared, right?
What would it take for Lanessa to not be scared, right? Well, in that particular situation, that was my, whoa, okay. So it was apparent to me that I hadn't done enough early enough to set those expectations, that this was a group decision and that I'm going to provide you information, and I'm going to let you know what I'm not comfortable with. These particular quality factors I think are a big concern, and I was never going to have enough data. I like data, and I can never have enough of it. So I had to remind myself, don't be a bottleneck and ask for help. Yes, I need you guys to make this decision, and how I'm not going to be scared is to get a little more data. We could do some dog food testing, and hey, I need help with that, spearheading that, because it's got to come from you. They aren't going to listen to me when I ask them to do this. So that was a big lesson.
Do you bring other people into that discussion? I mean, because one of the big debates is whether software testers should be responsible for launch, right?
Right.
Now, I know you're taking on more of a DevOps role, so I suspect that that's part of the decision making, or is it independent of it?
At that particular time, it was independent of it.
Okay.
But to answer your question, yes, I do bring other people in. In the way that we're working in our teams now, the whole team is involved. Product owners, support, sales, everybody. So this was early when I was starting out in a new environment, and I hadn't done a lot to make sure I was always reaching out and talking to everybody.
Right, and you talked about also a situation where you we were talking about like implementing severities or something in bug reports, and here it was, you wrote it up in such a way that you were soliciting feedback from people, and what the feedback you got was, just make decisions or something
Right, exactly.
like that. Right?
This was when I first started, and I was, you're excited when you start a new job, but I started to feel overwhelmed because this particular environment was way more complex than anything I'd worked in. So that was the one little thing that I knew right away, hey, we need to do this. Yet I was seeking, hey, what do you guys think about doing this? And thankfully, one of my leads said to me, well, you're empowered to make decisions here. Just tell us what to do. And I'm, it's embarrassing. You're right. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, this is what we're going to do. So you just do what needs to be done sometimes. And thankfully, I was in an environment where I was empowered to do that. It's like a tiny experiment. It's a small step for me to make.
A little micro experiment.
Right.
Hopefully this allows others to kind of build and embrace their bewilderment, right?
I hope so. Because
versus being afraid of it.
This community has really given me, and that's one of the things I closed with. I said I still draw strength from this particular community. I still get schooled in lessons of bewilderment, like outside of work and inside work too. So hopefully folks had some takeaways, something that could help, even if it's just a book recommendation, right?
There are a number of those, that's for sure. Excellent. Well, thank you for joining us. We
Thanks for your
appreciate
time.
it.
Thank you. All right.